Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's virtual business case in collaboration with Tulip and Danfoss. My name is Daniel Phillips, CEO here at Industry IoT. As you can see, the topic of the discussion today is why upskilling and digital augmentation is the key to winning the war for talent, which is an extremely relevant and important topic. Eddy, in a moment, I'll hand over to you. Perhaps you and Havard can formally introduce yourselves to the audience.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for getting this set up. And I think just to reiterate what Dan said, like super interesting topic for Havard and I to talk about today, but also we want to make it collaborative. So as questions come up, please pop them in the chat, and Dan will find suitable times for us to answer them throughout the presentation, and if not, at the end. So looking forward to it, and looking forward to hearing some of your perspectives. So firstly, let me introduce myself. Eddy Atkins from Tulip. My background is in manufacturing. I'd say that's feels like it's in my blood, driving improvement, and excited to be here. My role at Tulip to now has been leading customer success. So I've been working with some of our largest customers across the globe on digitizing of their manufacturing environments. So I think gained quite a lot of experience of the topic that we're going to show you today, and some of the challenges that they've had. So excited to be here, looking forward to sharing it and hearing some of your perspectives. Maybe Havard, over to you to introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks Eddy, and thanks for the introduction. As you say, you have a lot of experience into this area, so it's going to be great having this conversation. So from my side, coming from quite a few years in consumer goods and fast-moving consumer goods, I now sit in as a CEO and VP of one of the divisions in the company Danfoss, which is really about engineering tomorrow and making sure that the change to electrification, to getting heat pumps out in the market, and to reduce energy across the world is going to happen, and we're really at the forefront of many of those things, with a global footprint both in terms of sales and manufacturing. And specifically when it comes to this topic today, I think it's going to be really interesting to see the challenges that are being faced when it comes to talent, when it comes to development of process engineers and other roles within the factories, both in the UK and Europe, but also on a global scale, and see how the different challenges are actually being faced in many different places. So great to be with you, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Havard. I think it's great having you here, your expertise, and looking forward to hearing some examples of the challenges that you face and you have faced and you see in the company as well. So the agenda for today, we have three areas to cover on the war, winning the war for talent. The first one, just to set a bit of the scene, we've got some facts and figures for you. I think Havard, you'll bring in some of the real examples from your experiences to really set the scene. Secondly, we're starting to see a movement, like the customers that we work with, customers that we're not, like clients, customers that we're not working with, of people that are being successful in this area. And I think successful in attracting talent, but also probably more broadly successful in driving the next levels of impact from digital. And there's a hypothesis of ours that this is like a new movement. Some of it lives in methodologies from the past, but want to share perspective and some examples of that, and have some conversation with Havard on his experiences and maybe how it fits, and challenge us a bit on the thinking there. And then the third section, we have one of our customer examples to share, and then a bit of discussion around what it could look like and how you could take this approach and how you can think about moving forward. So excited by this. Anything else to add on the topic, Havard, before we jump, or we good to go?
No, I think for one, I think it is a great timing to have this conversation, also because of the dynamics that we are seeing around inflationary situations in a lot of markets, which puts companies in a more difficult position when it comes to fighting for talent. It is employees are looking for that salary increase or that next opportunity that can help them battle within this inflationary situation that we're in, which leaves us as companies that would like the best talents in a more exposed situation. So I think maybe that's to add as an intro, and I think, as you mentioned, there are a couple of steps during this conversation where it's brilliant. Also, if there are any questions or examples from the audience, to put them in the chat so that we can include that into the conversation as well.
Yeah, I think that's like a great perspective. For a lot of what we will share is data from the past, but right now we have this huge inflationary pressure, which is putting on one side the workers wanting to look for more opportunities where they can cover their own home increases in home bills, but also as a business, how can you be more productive and cover your increasing costs as well? So very important. So let's move through this. So our focus and our hypothesis, really, that we're wanting to test with you and with Havard today, is that the frontline workforce is underserved in manufacturing, and that's one of the key issues that's causing. It's an opportunity to attract and retain some of the best talent and overcome this talent challenge issue. And for a frontline workforce, we're talking really about the process engineers, so the skilled with deep degree backgrounds. How can you give them now the digital skills to help to adapt and react quickly to problems, to use the latest technology to continuously improve in their operations? But also from an operator perspective, how can you make the shop floor, the front line, an engaging place to work? Many of the operators will be coming with iPhones in their pockets, and not very few of the manufacturing floors I've been to feel like I'm working with an iPhone. So I think what are the challenges that are stopping us getting there, and helping to solve those, to help improving training of users and capturing those skills that are being lost, but also error proofing and augmenting workflows. So this is our challenge. Let's see if we can prove it. So what are we seeing on the workforce side? Like, I think as ever, a generational turnover, but really this younger generation that was joining both as production engineers, process engineers, as operators, is expecting a tech-first environment. They have a tech-first home life. They have a tech-first life. They're expecting that when they come to a role. And the war for talent, the amount of churn at all levels is huge, and the labor shortage is very widespread still across the UK and across Europe. So looking at from a UK perspective, from some recent research, this impact is costing the UK alone £7 billion in output, £7 billion in output. We're seeing in the UK 17.6% of manufacturing workforce churning in 2022, which is up from 12.6% in 2016. And this is not a reductions. This is really in a state where job vacancies are at a 30% higher level than pre-pandemic peak. It's a very tight labor market. I think that's reported to be the same across Europe. 39% of European manufacturers are reporting that they're having labor shortages. And there's not just labor in terms of headcount, but also the skilled labor that they need. And we're facing some real challenges, the worst in the last 30 years, the British manufacturers are reporting. So I think a really tough position, why we're talking about it today. Havard, this is very UK based. We've seen similar numbers in the research in the US. How does the picture fit from what you're seeing in your business and across the globe with your facilities?
No, I'm not sure if I should say gladly or not, but unfortunately it fits. I've got a personal experience now from the last half year, and also before that in experience exactly these things in a number of markets within Europe. So I know for sure that we face it in for instance, in Poland currently. I would absolutely sign up to this aspect. We have a similar case we have similar cases in Denmark. I know it's from the past in Sweden and in the US, as you mentioned. Visiting Mexico last week, we face exactly the same dynamic and the same issue, both in terms of keeping the employees, but also in terms of finding them with the right one. And the labor market is really competitive. India was a similar situation. Haven't seen the same in China, to be honest, to what extent, but I'm sure there might be other people on the call that could have. But for sure, I would definitely argue that this is not an isolated UK or Northern Europe case. For that sake, I truly believe that this is a global phenomenon. Then there might be scales of that, depending on exactly where we are, and maybe industry specific to some extent. But when it comes to many of these roles, I do believe that we are also seeing an industry gliding that is increasing.
Yep. Yeah. So a challenging position for many manufacturers across the globe, and it will be interesting to dig into some of these more reasons for each. So if we look at, I think now just going to dig in a bit further. So this is looking at the process engineering group, and against this challenging forecast, challenging tight labor market, actually the need for these process engineers is going to grow. So 4.2% growth is demanded through to 2027. I think as manufacturers, are we set up for really with the right problem-solving methodologies to meet the needs of these, from what they're used to working or following from the tech industry? How are we competing against all the other industries out there, whether that's other engineering industries or even for engineers making decisions to go into tech or into software? How, as manufacturers, can we make the environment attractive to come and work in? And these individuals, once you've trained them up, if you lose them, it's a very large skill gap that you're losing. So I think a hard pipeline to then replace if you're losing these highly skilled individuals. So I think retainment as well as attracting the new folks is important, and how to build an environment to capture that. On the operator side, I think seeing numbers of very high levels of people at least considering, and especially in the younger age groups, considering to looking or reevaluating the role that they have and what role that they're looking for. I think less of people looking for a job for life, and we're seeing that it's what people are willing to go and test different things. I think this brings a couple of impacts. One is thinking about what do you need to do to capture the skills and create to have technologies that allow you to easily onboard new staff and new joiners, so that the skill gap to ramp up to a good productivity level is not so ingrained in the knowledge. But also, how can you the environments, the interfaces, the interactions that people are working with are really help them do them jobs, support them to do their jobs, rather than being barriers and being work that's not good and not engaging to do. So I think some different perspectives on the different levels. Maybe Havard, do you have some examples on the challenges that you're seeing at these different levels, and where they're the same, where they're different, maybe across your different locations or across the different levels?
Well, I think firstly, there's one aspect when it comes to process engineers specifically, is you sometimes find a mismatch between where the manufacturing sites are based, so location versus where the bigger skill base of process engineers would want to live. and I think that is a complicating factor for a lot of companies in terms of attracting the right people, right? I also see, and this is not only with kind of young and process engineers as such, but I think it goes across a lot of jobs that people expect to be moving quite fast around. Meaning you don't want to think about staying 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a role. Maybe after a year and a half, you're already ready to be on the move, right? So unless you as an employer can offer that kind of opportunity to relatively quickly move to different experiences on the same base, I think that also makes you less attractive as an employer. And I think thirdly is, depending on the technological readiness that you have in the way you're operating your manufacturing sites, you have a uphill battle if you are lagging behind technologically wise. I believe quite firmly that's the case. And I also think that when it comes into kind of the operator side, it's a similar picture. But even here in many areas, just as an example, in next to one of our sites in Americas, there's also a huge site run by Whirlpool that employs 15,000 people. And of course, when you start talking about sites that are this big and they within the area, there might be 50, 60, 70,000 people of more or less the same characteristics that are needed. You can understand that it's also easier to move around for operators and go for the one with the latest, most attractive offer. And I think that the loyalty to companies is less high. And of course, this is one of the challenges that we have to face on attracting, and even more so in the last couple of years when the economy is booming and opportunities are plenty. We see this even more than what we would have done in recession times, for sure.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think the process engineers being coming out of university, being attracted to the exciting lights of a big city, so I think versus coming to a more industrial environment. I could understand that, and wanting to evolve and move fast up through there, around in different, getting lots of experiences and gaining that. I think super interesting perspectives and how we can tackle that. No. Very good. So I think in summary to this final section, we're saying to win the war for talent, manufacturers need to satisfy their needs for more impactful work. So I think that fits with a bit the points as well that you had, Havard, is how can we create work that's engaging, work that's exciting, that's going to allow people to gain those experiences that they want. And help them work more comfortably with technology. And organizations need to upskill and augment their teams, is the practice. So I think the next section I want to walk through a bit, what do we mean by this upskilling and augmenting, and share a bit of a perspective here on what we believe one approach is and what we're starting to see people taking to really solve some of these issues, engage talent, and also drive productivity in their facilities. So I think two underlying themes here that I hope nobody will argue with. One is the digital transformation theme. So across manufacturing, it's Industry 4.0 is a big topic, but also outside of manufacturing, digital becoming a part of our normal lives. Us engaging with our smartphone as a way of managing our whole day through our calendar, through booking for our flights if we go on a travel event. Secondly, is the hybrid work environment is a norm, I would say. It's now something that was very rare previously, because the pandemic has kind of forced it to become normality. But now I think almost the norm and often expected that people will be working remotely. And I think, Havard, interesting to your point about the process engineers wanting to be in attracted to maybe a more central location, how are there ways that we can leverage the hybridness of the work environment to actually maybe allow both of these things to happen and allow people to move around and experience different parts of the facility. So for us, digital augmentation, it's a human-centric approach to manufacturing that leverages digital solutions to augment workers' abilities and create and improve productivity, empower decision-making, and enable continuous improvement of processes. I think many would argue, and I'm going to argue, that this is not new. So on the right-hand side, this is like anyone that has studied lean, which I think most people working in manufacturing will have done, will understand that putting the problem first, putting the human work, being human-centric is important to driving impact. I think we have seen process-centric thinking, I think, becoming prevalent, becoming technology first, implementing solutions, but not thinking about what the interface with the human is going to be for this new machine ERP connection that's being put in to a facility, and then the screen that the human gets is the last thing that's thought about, and it's white numbers on a black screen, and you need to be an expert to run the system. So we are in our approach, and what we're seeing others doing is really taking this lean methodology, but really taking it with a technological mindset and in the way. So taking what is the process, focusing on the human, and bringing them into a core part of the problem solving and augmenting their work as much as possible. So I think, this human-centric approach starts with going to the pain point. How do you solve the pain point? What is how do you make the human as effective as possible? And one example I want to share here is a company that was doing inspections on returned goods in DCs. And these DCs were across the US. There were, say, 6 of them, and they had 2 or 3 inspectors in each DC. The manager of these inspectors was having to travel between these distribution centers and go and train up the new inspectors. They were having to, when they completed their inspections at the end of the day, they would type them into Excel and send that file into their manager, who would consolidate. And the next day they would get a set of numbers about how many goods had been returned. And this company was really impacted by the claims that it was spending on warranty, and it wasn't able to properly inspect that these goods that were being returned were actually worthy returns and they should be paying the warranties on them. So not very fun being an inspector in this distribution center without a manager, without proper training. The manager had this frustrating process of collating all these spreadsheets and not knowing who was doing what or how much each was doing until the next day, and also this very painful bottom line impact on the warranty claims for the company. So what they did was they actually took that process of inspection and turned it into a digital application with videos, with go, no-goes, images of what should be returned, what shouldn't be returned, augmenting the operator's process with a digital workflow. When they did that created something they were able to standardize the work much better, a very lean concept, but also collect the data of every inspection in real time for the manager that was sitting at a remote location from these 6 distribution centers. So he was able to monitor what they were doing, the productivity, and he knew in real time what was being accepted and what wasn't being accepted. So they were able to create a significant bottom line impact on the amount they were spending on warranty returns, and also create a much better environment for the operators who knew what they were doing, had this collaborative activity with their remote manager. So I think an example of taking a problem first and moving it, solving it with the operators, the humans in mind. this is maybe an example of the type of applications we're talking about. So they are they give the right instructions to the users. They're simple and intuitive, embedded with images and rich text and media. So very, very engaging, very clear to understand. These types of applications, digital workflows can be designed to fit the process across the facility. So the process engineers will build those to fit the particular pain points, the particular use cases across the facility. And this is the interface is very much like PowerPoint. So they're going through a PowerPoint-like interface to build up the digital workflow, and as they're building the application, is collecting data. So an example of maybe how a process engineer might work with this in their facility is a customer that I worked with had a quality problem on a garment producing line. So they were making trainers. They had a daily inspection by on the line. The inspection was being reported on a piece of paper about where the defects were on this trainer. And then at the end of the week, the process engineer would spend 2 hours collecting this information and typing it into Excel to then present it back to the workforce. So on Monday, they got the results of what happened last week. This process engineer took to the Tulip platform and built on that one Friday afternoon, instead of typing the data into Excel, built an application to actually do the inspection on the production line. And the inspection was a picture of a trainer where they clicked to report the defects on the areas of the trainer where the defects were. And then on the Monday, they started running that on the production line, and in real time, as the inspections of the trainers or defects on the trainers were being detected, the operators were reporting them in this inspection application, and they were getting real-time information on where the defects were occurring. They were able to then respond to those much quicker, feed that information back to earlier parts in the process so they could fix the problems that were occurring, and saw a massive improvement in their right first time numbers. So I think the person that knew the process was able to digitize their own process and very quickly not have to build something across the whole facility, but solve a very specific problem, and create an interface. And this is the example of maybe how that fits together. So once they've built the application, the data is being collected, and you're able to build interfaces and dashboards that allow you to monitor the situation in going forward forever. That analysis is there. You don't have to redo it. And then as you detect other problems, you can go back in, improve and iterate on the applications, improve your analysis if you need to, and your data continues to flow. So that's when, if the problem occurs again, you can go back and have a look at that information and that data. So a very iterative process, fitting kind of a typical continuous improvement process, but now with a digital tool in the loop that allows you to augment and optimize. And I think here, this is not a go and spend months in a conference room and build your big application for your facility. And deploy it in one big go and stop production. The way we recommend doing this is actually taking a use case, building something to go and solve that use case, and iterating very fast with 2-3 weeks, having something running and in front of an operator and being tested tested on the shop floor, running on the shop floor. And an example of a customer that I worked with who wanted to digitize their operator flow, taking the work instructions and error-proofing the workflows in their assembly environment, actually took their SOP and spent 2, maybe 3 weeks in a conference room putting their SOP into an app. And unfortunately, when they showed it to their operators, the operators were, "This is not right. This is not what I could do." And they very quickly rebuilt it. So I think one of the learnings for them, and learnings I try to teach many of the customers I work with is actually that you need to start fast, show minimum viable products, small tests with the people that are going to use it very quickly. And I think we see the people that work in that way, work very iteratively, have a lot of success in driving value. So I think some examples from me, Havard, and some sort of hypothesis on this digital augmentation that we're seeing across multiple of our customers and others doing. I wonder what's your reflection. What are your thoughts on putting the impact first and driving, sort of taking this, evolving the lean approach, I suppose?
First, I think it's exactly right. I really believe it is the way to get results faster. And I was actually going to ask you a question, Eddy, on with these examples where in the companies that you have engaged, how quickly do you get a response from the first conversation and talk until you actually have the first use case and the first application in place? And the background for my question, is to put it into context, is I know myself and work in many kind of big organizations, and I think a lot of the people that are joining this call is representing big companies, right? And often you get into conversation around money, about resources. You get into communications with, do you need to connect to IT systems? And I appreciate this might not be the case here, but there might be a lot of boundaries that you need to manage to get to a stage where you actually do something. Any perspectives based on the examples that you have and how these have been overcome, maybe as input to all of us?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. So I mean, everything, it does honestly vary from 2 weeks to 6 months, 9 months, like that timeline to get going. And I think it's the same challenge with any change program. It's like getting alignment and getting started can be tough. But I mean, the platform, when I say two weeks, it's like we have seen people buy like a small number of licenses, 1 or 2, and actually just start on a very small part with no need to like worry about complexity of having to integrate with another system or have to necessarily jump through lots of kind of approvals, because they're able to start on a very small closed use case at a very small cost. So I think it's possible to start very quickly. And I think what it reminds me of, one of the descriptions I have is like hack and govern is the kind of lingo that we've started calling it. And the hack comes from tech. So I mean, I think technology companies and software companies have really taken this like lean or agile from the manufacturing environment and made their own version of agile, which is very much like big complex organizations coming together in small teams to solve particular problems, but then maybe having a clear goal in mind, but then really saying, okay, 2 weeks, what are we going to do in the next 2 weeks? And building delivering something in 2 weeks, and then taking the next step and doing lots of iterative steps. And this, I think, agile Scrum methodology that is prevalent within tech companies, manufacturing can learn a lot from. I think there's and that's maybe the hack bit, but I think the govern bit is there as well, that's needed to enable this to be a success, basically. And I think there needs to be some risk management. There needs to be some governance from a training perspective to enable people to learn how to use these platforms. Like people coming from a non-digital perspective learn maybe where they could get into trouble if they start using platforms like this. So I think that some looking at this kind of complexity, how do we work as cross-functional teams, and how do we like hack and govern, as we call it.
And I think, Eddy, one of the you got some of these examples or advantages that you have listed here, but I can see one key challenge that we currently face is that with wanting to move people faster around, and secondly, unfortunately, seeing that we do need to both lose people and we hire people quite quickly, we cannot spend a lot of time onboarding and getting people trained. So we need to speed up that process significantly. And I can see kind of the digital augmentation as a key tool to be able to do that. So not only do you help the workforce get better trained overall, because I think you can do more solid onboarding, but also you can do it much faster by using the opportunities that you're presented here. And then I also think that for a lot of the people involved, this feeling of accomplishment and of making a difference fast, and kind of you start something and you get the feedback and the results quite quickly is very rewarding. And I think that coming back to this attractiveness as an employer, the more you can help do this, you act, and you see the benefit, and you can improve it, and the faster that cycle can be. And if we can support it by digital augmentation tools, the more impactful I think that the workplace experience is in many aspects.
Yeah. I wonder, Havard, do you have any examples outside of the four walls of manufacturing? I know you're responsible for more of the supply chain, so how the augmentation maybe could support cross-functional improvement programs, or even augmentation of processes outside of manufacturing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really believe this is universal in that respect. If we for a moment just stick within the kind of the end-to-end supply chain, I can perfectly well see this in areas related to planning. For sure, we have kind of main kind of core planning systems, but I think there is space in the kind of periphery of those planning systems to use this. Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned examples related to more logistics and warehousing. Very clearly the same thing, right? I can see it in customer service cases where we also have a lot of similar activities where you need to capture a lot of data. You need to kind of track it to get feedback. The decision process needs to move faster. These are also areas where I can see it, and I would expect that if you think broader than necessarily also just supply chain, but more administrative related tasks and workflows, absolutely that this is applicable to those areas as well. So beyond, you don't have to stick with inside of the four walls of a manufacturing plant. Absolutely not, for sure. Maybe what to think about it, we talk about process engineer here as maybe one of the vehicles to help to get this done, right? Because you might expect a certain level of technical skills. So I think maybe, I don't know to what extent that is a prerequisite as you would expand the use of this into other areas that you have that expertise. Any comments on that?
Yeah, so I think the approach and what we are, I suppose, trying, the ethos of the platform is it becomes something that supports the core skills of a process engineer. So it's not you don't have to don't have to know a programming language to be able to do the digitization. I think probably the first skill that you need to have is this: you do need to be able to solve problems and structure problems and go after them. There is some logic thinking that you need to have that I think most engineers cover as part of engineering, as their degrees. And also the way we are, the core skills of using the platform, we are open sourcing as part of it's part of the platform. So we have a university and lots of support material that is open and accessible to process engineers to go and learn and build their skills as they need them. So it's the idea of being is not, you don't have to become an expert in the whole platform, the whole approach, but you can go and get the skills just in time as you need to add, say, you want to add a new device to collect some particular data, some measurement data, then you can go and find the small course that teaches you how to do that, the small support article that teaches you how to do that. So it's going to be really sort of just in time, self-led learning as well. I think is important. And I'll come on in a minute, Havard, to maybe what another one of our customers is doing in terms of the way they're thinking about structuring their program and how they're taking Tulip across many sites and building those skills. I thought, I think your point on sort of embedding or augmenting those kind of from the operator perspective, actually taking some of maybe the more complex tasks, whether that's automation type tasks or embedding them in, is I think a really big lever. And often some particular administrative task can be the most complex to learn, even though they're maybe not that difficult. They just might have many steps where you need to do information processing, and actually that's digital technology is right for that. So thanks for your perspectives. So we want to make sure we leave some time for some questions. So I'll spend a few more minutes going through a case example here just to reiterate some of the points, and then we'll jump on to some questions. So one of our customers, Stanley Black & Decker, have been doing exactly this approach. So this is Oscar. He now has an application that he is able to track his work orders and keep his supervisors and the rest of the plant up to date with what work orders he's completing and where he is with those work orders. Previously, they had pieces of paper that they would fill in, that they would run around and update and complete in spreadsheets. They were not on any sort of global ERP rollout because of the size of the plant, because of the priority. So the process engineer here, Sophia, she actually took this application and built it, worked very closely with Oscar and the team to learn how to learn their process and learn how to digitize it and go through lots of iterative processes with them to actually solve it. And we'll share the video. There's a great video describing this whole case that we can share at the end. I think the last part I wanted to talk about was Antonio and the rest of the leadership team at SVD, but Antonio particularly this was not IT led, but coming from his background was lean. He was running improvement programs. He was driven by improving manufacturing, and he was taking the work that people like Sophia were doing and understanding how can they leverage that with others across the organization. So maybe taking templates, taking structures and actually using that as standards across the organization, but also thinking about how does he train this? How do they train up a Sophia or multiple Sophias in every plant to the right skill level so they can actually have this augmentation as part of their daily activity, but then also himself going through a transformation of learning about how do you take a SaaS platform and deploy it in an organization, partnering very closely with the IT organization to do this. And I think a bit to your point on timing, Havard, they started running very quickly within a few weeks in one plant doing a test example. I think Sophia's work order tracking she built over 2 or 3 weeks and had up and running within a month. But this is a program across the organization that has many layers and many levels that is rolling out over time. So I think an interesting example of how all the different levels are going through a transformation. And excited to hear your questions and have some discussion.
Great discussion so far, guys. We've had a few really interesting comments and questions in the chat room. So We had a really interesting question from a gentleman called Thomas in the audience. To win the war on talent, you state manufacturing needs to satisfy their needs for more impactful work and help them work more comfortably. What is your recommendation on how to measure more impactful work and work getting more comfortable?
So more impactful work, more comfortable. I think we're looking there at employee satisfaction. So, I mean, I would look, like, if they're not already doing some kind of employee satisfaction type survey with relevant questions around engagement and how do you feel you're driving impact from the work that you do on a daily basis. So I think that would be maybe like a yearly survey or something like maybe more of a lagging measure that could be used. I've seen organizations use then a more pulse survey, maybe to specifically target this type of question. So you could do that on a more regular basis, testing like a group of participants, maybe not everybody, and then finally just like touch point interviews. I would, like, on the shop floor, talking to my staff, the people that I'm working for, and understanding how they're feeling, and using those touch points as a barometer for me to see how they were projected.
Okay, great.
Just very quickly building on that, I think there is an opportunity also to look at a kind of time saved or reduction of number of repetitive steps that is happening, because many of the things that we talk about in terms of the use of these tools are there to facilitate or reduce the exactly these things, like a lot of repetitive steps, unnecessary admin itself is probably necessary, but the way that we do it is not very efficient, right? So if you can measure the time spent, I think that is also a way to follow up. It doesn't necessarily give you directly the employee satisfaction, but I think that's an indirect way, as I do know from experience, that people, once you start removing what people perceive as not very fulfilling tasks and repetitive tasks, their work satisfaction increases as a response.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. There's a question from Doug McKnight, who is works in the manufacturing field in the chemical space, and his question is, he's interested to hear your views on the positive and negative impacts of the hybrid workplace, which I think you touched on early on in the session. Eddy, I don't know whether you have any insights to share in terms of what you see, perhaps maybe within your own business, but some of the customers that you work with.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I see two areas. Like, one, I think there is always something about meeting people in person that you get a click, you're able to problem solve better. Like, there's something collaborative about being able to do that. So I see, like, we went very no travel, not going to customers, and for a while did projects where we were working fully remotely, and they were successful. But I think they take you need a commitment on both sides to really make that happen, and it can quite quickly become like transactional and maybe not as fast paced as it could be. So we're starting to do some travel and going back in person with people, seeing their facilities. Like, the travel takes a while, but having one or two of those meetings in person, like, I think really can kick off a project really well and create that collaborative environment. I think secondly, though, like the huge advantage we still see today, and I think probably have been reminded of as part of COVID, is being able to pull in an expert from the other side of the world to help you solve a problem. And I think this is particularly maybe not yet there in all manufacturing environments, but coming from a manufacturing and now working in tech, I see this. Like, we will have a problem in somewhere across the globe on one of our deployments of Tulip that we need to resolve very quickly, or a customer may have a problem, an app building issue that they want to solve, and we can pull in the right expert from across the globe to actually log in with them, do a shared, like, not just doing a shared session over Zoom, but really going in working together inside the platform together, and both making changes together at the same time. So I think this, like, we're able to now deliver the right expert to those people to help them solve their problems, and I think that creates additional impact. And I think there's, in the that's probably even, well, I'm sure it's happening today in some manufacturing environments, but that can be I think a really nice aim and part of implementing cloud and implementing this kind of augmented way of working as well.
Yeah, interesting. Does that resonate with you, Havard? Do you have anything to add to Eddy's comments?
It does resonate, and I don't necessarily have anything specific more to add. I think Eddy gave a good perspective on it, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Next question. In your opinion, what is the best first step to augmenting your workforce? Eddy, it probably makes more sense to come to you first.
Yeah, we have a term internally which is GFD, like just go, let's go, like let's go, let's find like what's a problem we can solve today, and go solve it. Like, let's start quickly, but start with a problem that's gonna resonate, gonna have impact, just go.
Okay, cool. Havard, any thoughts to add here? I know that this is something that you're probably actively working on at the moment, but anything that perhaps you could share on this one?
Well, I honestly think that you need you need to get going and get that first example. And I think once you do, and the people involved feels that it's successful and can be ambassadors of it, there are millions of challenges and problems to solve, big and large, right? And if you just need to make sure that you pick the right first one, right? So that you get a success on to start with, and then the rest will follow, I think. Don't make it too big. Don't involve too many people, but get going so that you can then scale from there, I think.
Yeah. I think, and also something, I don't know, I notice is sometimes the first move is, if you do it alone, is not that challenging, basically. Like, it's tough to make the first move, but then to find the followers and maybe repeat that and do that again takes another level of complexity, and you've got to find some followers to follow you on your crazy vision as well. So that kind of, how do you partner with the right people to then turn your first project into something like the next thing, the next bigger thing as well. And that, I think that's important to show value from what you do first, but also go and find partner with those people across the organization and in IT, in the central, in supply chain, that are going to help you leverage what you've created, and not just think about being within your silo, within your one element as well.
Yeah. And how you anchor it, then maybe I think that as leadership, once you have those examples, you need to help promote, and you need to show and make it visible that it is important that we address these fundamental issues that we're looking to solve behind this, right? And if you can do that through leadership, then I think you're helping to drive exactly what you prescribe, Eddy.
Okay, Eddy, a question that maybe comes up in your world, or maybe for your sales guys, I'm not sure, but how do I convince my managers that the cost of implementing this technology is worth it?
Yeah, and I think a bit about what Havard said is, let's go and measure what you think the impact will be. So you are going to go and solve a problem. Maybe it's taking some particular non-value added or administrative work from a process. Like, go measure how many hours of non-value adding work your operators are doing, and target you're going to save 50% with it. Or maybe it's a quality improvement that you want to make, and you can put value against that. Like, if we're making 5% rejections, and we're going to reduce that to 2.5%. That's value that you can create and you can use against a business case and an ROI. And I think and to do if you're starting with a project, a small project, a proof of value, then you're able to maybe have a smaller, less risky business case, and then use the results from that first project, that first proof of value to use to back up and maybe a bigger business case to do something larger as well.
Okay.
And often I think my experience is that it's when you want to start that conversation and if people are asking for a business case, right? How many FTEs can you actually save by putting in place this and this, right? That's where I think it gets, then you're probably starting off a little bit too big. So I would maybe look then to scale it down, just to do something that you can learn from and get one of these victories under your belt, and then you can look at kind of how to take it to kind of the next level. It is sometimes difficult to directly go in and be bold and put in an argument about, I'm going to cut out so and so many FTEs, which is what actually pays for an investment, right? So I guess there is a first step, small risk taking without too much to invest and too much to lose, and from there you can scale it.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, I'm conscious of the time, gentlemen. We have a couple of minutes left, so I'd like to do a mini wrap up. So Eddy, I guess an interesting question for you is, considering the topic of the discussion today and what you've heard from Havard, is there a parting piece of advice that you could perhaps leave with the audience, the listeners that have tuned in today?
Yeah, I think it's a exciting time for manufacturing, and I'm seeing many folks that I work with and doing some great things. And I think a lot, for me, really, that is embodying the lean, old tradition, we call it old. I don't know. It's still there, focusing on the operator, focusing on the human, and that's not gone. But now this technology wave that's here is amazing, and I'm excited to see what others can do with it. And yeah, that's what gets me up out of bed every day, is finding out what the next cool, great thing, impactful thing that my customer has built.
Okay, thank you, Eddy. And Havard, maybe a question for you. Less about a piece of advice, but maybe from the discussion with Eddy today, what's your key takeaway from this session?
My key takeaway is, and personally, I've already kind of made that decision that we have a few areas where we're definitely going to explore this very, very specifically and have a conversation with in this case with Eddy and Tulip. I'm sure I guess you're not alone in this market, Eddy. So, but for sure from our side to start, because I do believe that there is great potential in many things that I can see in several of our factories where we can use this and we can for sure benefit from it, and we can do it without thinking about big MES systems or big other kind of software investments, right? We can get more straight into it, and that's what to me is the big benefit with this specific part of the technology that we have talked today. But I met a lot of other things that you don't have to make it huge to get started.
Okay,
I think is my key takeaway.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much, both of you. It's been a really, really interesting discussion. Lots of nice comments and questions from the audience. It's been a pleasure to sit down with you both this afternoon, and thanks again for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Havard. Lovely discussion.